Hey one, hey all. Today we're gonna go down memory lane a little bit when we look at this guy. Most would know it as the Reveal the Shield Windcharger, but this is actually the United 27 version of Windcharger. And while this is a trip down memory lane, there's actually a lot more here to discuss than I originally anticipated. Why? Well, we're going to compare this guy to his Combiner Wars and his Power of the Primes counterpart. We're also going to talk about him in relation to the recent Earthrise Cliffjumper, even though I don't have Cliffjumper in hand. But more importantly, I'm going to revision this guy as someone else. And that's how he's going to stand in my collection. So we're going to cover all of those comparisons, all of those things, and what my final assessment is in the latest GotBot True review. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe, and while you're at it, light them up, baby. And hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton. It lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, Transformers Collectors, NL, The Autobot Family, Transformers versus G.I. Joe versus DC Universe versus Marvel, and all of my social media links. They're all down in the description below. If you're in a position to help the channel, man, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon, see what we offer to you through Teespring, or of course, hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. And this is the United version, I think with some toyhax decals on him, of Windcharger, Scout class Windcharger from a few years ago. And he was and is pretty fantastic, and I've never handled this before, but I've heard a lot of people say that, you know what, he's still my Windcharger of choice. He is definitely stylized. But I've wanted to kind of look at this guy for a long time because he recently came up again in discussions of Earthrise Cliffjumper, with some people saying, you know what, Earthrise Cliffjumper might be a bit more than a legend, but he's not as much as a deluxe. Maybe he's more like a scout, which is what this guy is. So we're going to kind of talk about all of that, and we're going to see what character I settled on. When we come back here after the review, we're going to see what character I settled on as this guy representing in my personal collection. It's not Windcharger. Without any further ado though, let's head over to the table and take a closer look at this guy. And so yes indeed, today is kind of a battle of the Windchargers, if you will, because I'm going to kind of reference back to the Combiner Wars Windcharger, whom I looked at a long time ago in episode 171, and I'm also going to make a few comments as it relates to the Power of the Primes Legends class Windcharger, who I looked at in episode 339. And this, of course, is, most people will know it as I previously said, as the Reveal the Shield Scout class Windcharger, but this is actually the version that came from Japan, the United 27 Windcharger. How do I know that? Because there's no rub symbol on this guy. It's replaced with a tampographed Autobot symbol. Plus, I think there's some toyhax stickers on the guy. I can't confirm that. We'll see as we go through. So apparently the Combiner Wars lad up front here turns into like some sort of nondescript muscle car. The Power of the Primes one way down here, he turns into like a fictionalized, stylized version of a Trans Am. And the guy right in the middle here, our Scout class lad, turns into kind of a mix between a Mustang and a Camaro. So when it comes to the cars, honestly I like all of them. They're cool red cars. But more to the point, this lad is a beauty by himself. I love this. I think it turned out really well. We're gonna go in a little bit closer actually. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I love the top of it. I think that this is the tempo here. There may be a little Autobot sticker in there possibly. I'm wondering if the back here might be a toyhax label, possibly, but he looks fantastic. He rolls like a champion. He feels really good. We're going to do the conversion, and then we're going to get into his scores and some comparisons and that sort of stuff. So how do we do the conversion? Well, we come here and we begin by lifting off an arm and lifting off an arm. They'll sort of bend on their own. We'll deal with that in a little bit. But now you can pick up the window piece here and flip out the legs and flip out the legs and bring out the feet and bring out the feet. And now we can stand the guy up. And with him stood up, we can sort of just get his arms out of the way. I want to note two things. One, you have to push the side of the leg in. People always forget that step. You have to push the side of the leg in. Then this whole assembly here, the way that you need to collapse it is very Combiner Wars-esque. So we collapse this up. The difference between this and Combiner Wars is that when you collapse this up, it actually stays pegged. Combiner Wars did not. We can turn the arms kind of around and stand them up. Now, if this was Combiner Wars, pretty much we're to the point where we would have to kind of take the chest section down over the back. As a matter of fact, let me just touch on what I mean. So, just like the waist had to collapse here, this whole waist section needs to collapse on the Combiner Wars, but it doesn't like stay up. The car section stays as a backpack on the Combiner Wars, which did have the added benefit of leaving the chest looking like the way Windcharger's chest should. Here, instead of this piece coming down the back so that we kind of still have a Windchargery chest, this is where the United or Reveal the Shield version becomes highly stylized, because we now flip that down to become his chest. And you can see the size of this guy in comparison to a Legends. He was a Scout, this is a Legends. As a matter of fact, here are all three of the lads together. Now, undoubtedly, the Power of the Primes, who I looked at, like I said in episode 339, his paint apps were a 10. That is the quintessential Windcharger based on his G1 animation model. The Combiner Wars, I said, was about a 7, kinda, you know, sorta. You know it's Windcharger. The Reveal the Shield one, or the United one, as the case may be here, is obviously the most stylized, looks the least like Windcharger. I'm only going to give it about a 6. When it comes to the transformation, the Combiner Wars Windcharger only got a 3. It's a hot trash mess of a transformation. The Power of the Primes Windcharger, he got somewhere in the vicinity of an 8.5. I would say that the transformation here is also about an 8.5. It's pretty intuitive, it's pretty good, a couple of fiddly little parts, but nothing major. And everything is secure in robot mode, everything is secure in vehicle mode. And all that really leaves is the articulation. The Combiner Wars, again, only has articulation of 3 or 4 because everything knocks into everything else. The articulation, however, on the Power of the Primes was an 8. What about United? Well, we have a head that can go left and right, look up and down. We have shoulders that can go all the way around. No trouble. Out to the side, about that far. It's not super out to the side. We have a swivel because of the ball joint. The wrist kind of moves in because you're able to flip out this. Apparently that's his blaster, or it's like a magnet piece. It has a C-clip on it that you can use. I do wish that they could go out a little more. No waist. No thigh. But we do have a wiggle at the thigh. Legs can go all the way forward. They can go back. They can go back a bit. You know, pardon the truck sound there, by the way. They can go back a bit, not as far as I'd like. We do have a super duper deep knee, and we do have ankle tilt. So there's a lot here to like. I'm going to say that the articulation is really quite well done. I'm going to say overall it's about an 8. So the final score for the Power of the Primes Windcharger was an 8.75. The final score for the Combiner Wars was only about a 3. The Combiner Wars is easily the weakest. This guy had a 6 for his overall look, an 8.5 for his transformation, and about an 8.5 for his articulation. He's about an 8. He is not quite as good as the Power of the Primes, only because he doesn't embody the look. Like, that's the strength of the Power of the Primes. It looks the most like Windcharger. In terms of functionality, I've heard a lot of people say, no, I'm keeping this one and this is my Windcharger. I totally get it. He functions tremendously well. He is so very strong and so very well done. Here he is next to a Earthrise Deluxe, that being Wheeljack, so he is definitely smaller than a Deluxe, but he's also a bit taller than a Legends. Now, this is where things kind of get interesting for me. This is Hornet's agent. It's a third-party, of course, version of Bumblebee. Actually, it's a KO of a third-party, but that's neither here nor there. This guy is the same height as Earthrise Cliffjumper. Exact same height. If you see the two of them next to each other, they scale tremendously well. So this Windcharger is a little bit bigger. Cliffjumper I looked at in episode 675. I no longer have him in hand. I don't own them. But I've heard a lot of people do the comparisons between this Windcharger and that Cliffjumper. That Cliffjumper had paint of 9 because outside of the arms, it's not bad, and there's a ton of paint on it. So the Cliffjumper, I will give credit where credit is due, has more paint than what this guy has. The Cliffjumper had an articulation of 10. Perfect articulation. I'll give credit where credit is due. This guy had an articulation of about 8.5 because he doesn't have the thigh, he doesn't have the waist. The transformation for the Cliffjumper, to me, is about a 7. I don't think it's the best transformation. I think the transformation on Windcharger is better. Windcharger was about 1/3 of the price, roughly, that Cliffjumper is going for. A lot of people have brought that up in the arguments saying, hey, Cliffjumper is a legend. I'm not paying a deluxe price for a legend. I get it. I'm with you. I'm not doing it either. But when those same people come back and say he should only be the price of an old-time Scout or a Legends, I can't necessarily agree with that either. Cliffjumper is somewhere in between. So at the end of the day, our boy here is a pretty great Transformer. He's fun. He's interesting. He's a pretty good Windcharger. He's definitely way better than the Combiner Wars. If you're okay with him being stylized, he's probably the way to go rather than Power of the Primes. If you want the true to animation version, you need that Power of the Primes. But for those who argue that this is their Windcharger choice and they're just going to stick with him, I totally get it. I mean, just look at this pose right here. Any way you cut it, he is a pretty fantastic Windcharger. And here we are once again, and here he is, and I think it's safe to say that he is infinitely better than the Combiner Wars Windcharger, which was a pretty sad, lackluster attempt at trying to sort of mimic some of the tricks here. It didn't turn out so well. Yes, this is highly stylized, but it's still vastly better than the Combiner Wars. Then we get to the Power of the Primes, and while I think operationally speaking, this guy probably works better, I also understand why some people, myself included, would say the Power of the Primes one, though, looks the most like the character. I agree with that as well. Some people would, I think everybody pretty much universally would skip the Combiner Wars one for this guy or the Power of the Primes. I think. But I see the argument on both sides for people saying, hey, I'm going to keep this guy as my Windcharger, or hey, I'm going to upgrade to the Power of the Primes. I get it. In terms of a relation to the Earthrise Cliffjumper, this guy still lacks a waist, he lacks a thigh. The Earthrise Cliffjumper does definitely have more paint, it does definitely have more engineering. So I don't think it should necessarily be as inexpensive as what this guy is, but I still don't think it's a deluxe either. At the end of the day, though, as much as I like this guy, I do have in my collection a version of Windcharger that I'm happy with. So what becomes of this guy then? He was gifted to me by Event Progenitor. I thank him so very much for letting me be able to take a look at this guy. I'm happy to add him to my collection. But I think, and a shout out to Ken here, I'm going to do what Ken suggested. I think this guy is actually going to fill in my collection as a modern take, a modern update of the leader of the Omnibots, Overdrive. He has a very Overdrive looking body, and even the stylized alternate head sculpt with a little bit of black paint would look pretty Override-ish. As a matter of fact, I kind of wish now that we had a third-party upgrade kit to turn this guy into Override with his little wings and his little blaster on the front. So, I'm happy to have him. I think that he is definitely the middle-of-the-road version of Windcharger, and I think he's fantastic. But for me, I think he's going to stand in as my Override. And that's okay by me. Let me know what you think about this guy. I appreciate you coming by and giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, don't forget that there's a donate link in the description. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we offer to you through Teespring. Or, of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. Stick around. Have some fun with us, baby. And don't forget that somehow, someway, each and every single day, man, you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres of the old-fashioned way, baby, right here inside the videos.